it's not going to give it full justice. But he said, like, that there, can you hold that? I'm like, sure. It's like, ah, and then it's like, can you push it a bit more? Like, ah, and then no, more, and then it's like, ah, and as I pushed out of nowhere, and I genuinely, it shocked me. I was so surprised. I suddenly started bawling my eyes out, like floods of tears, just like, what the fuck? And like, just literally something happened inside of me where this, just pushing this note brought this extraordinary release of something. And the sort of what came along with that, he said, like, close your eyes and describe or sing or put words to the experience if you can. And all I remember seeing was like the tar sands in Canada and some of the Amazon forest destruction, and basically Mother Nature being torn apart. And that was somehow the image, and maybe that represented that pain that I was carrying inside my body, that I was releasing in that moment. It's like the pain of first-hand experience of our destruction of this planet, and it was super, super powerful for me.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Take a Deep Breath. Today's breathcast is with a hero of mine, and I don't say those words lightly, but we've got Bruce Parry on the show. I can't believe I got the opportunity to speak to Bruce. If you don't know who he is, Bruce Parry did a very famous set of TV shows called Tribe that went all over the world, and he essentially lived with different tribes. It is an incredible series, and I highly recommend you check it out. But it's given Bruce, one of the few humans on the planet right now who lives in Western society, an understanding and an insight on how these tribes live and how we used to live before kind of modernity kicked in. And so I was really excited to talk to Bruce, because not only does he have that, he's also going to talk to us about his own journeys. And he's got a journey into breathwork, into spirituality. He's done ayahuasca, and a whole host of other things. And so I wish we had 10 hours to pick into it. But what I bring you here is some wonderful information from Bruce, a beautiful human being with a wonderful history, a wonderful story, and somebody that I think the message needs to get out there, not only about the stuff that Bruce has learned, but the stuff that he brings us from these tribes. He has a beautiful film out called Tawai, which I will link down below as well. It's such a wonderful documentary he made, and a little bit sad and a little bit tragic, so something worth checking out. I believe we do touch on that in the podcast. So enjoy this. It's my privilege to bring you Bruce Parry, and if you're new to Bruce, you're in for a ruddy treat. And if you've heard of Bruce before, then yeah, you're going to enjoy this. You know about Bruce. Just a very, very quick word from me. Not sponsored, but I do have an affiliate link to Sensate. Sensate is the device I use to meditate. I really struggle with passive meditation. That's one of the reasons I was drawn to breath work. And with Sensate, I found this lovely little pebble that sits on your chest, which does something called vagal toning. Just gets me into a really relaxed state really quickly. And I do it morning and night. I've got a link below, an offer code, to get you a discount on it. It's an affiliate link for the channel, so you're supporting us as well. And mine's by my bedside. I don't go anywhere without it now. I get charged up and keep it ready to go. Beautiful music on the tracks. Just a wonderful, wonderful device. So highly recommend it. As you know, I don't push a lot of stuff on this channel, but this is just something that I've just fell in love with accidentally, and now can't stop yabbering on to people about how amazing it is, because I'm always like, I can't do meditation. My mind's too busy. It's too difficult. And then I use this and I'm just like, and I'm getting really great sleep using it as well. So links in the down below. Anyway, I don't want to keep you away from Bruce, so enjoy this breathcast, and we'll see you on the next one after. Cheers. Here's Bruce. Thank you so much for doing this, Bruce. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good, mate. Really good. There's a storm going on today. It's a big storm day. So just in from the colds and warming up slowly. How are you?
Yeah, very good. I'm more Midlands, so it normally is. I think it's hit Ireland, been pretty bad. You're probably getting the second worst of it.
I'm basically the first hill
in
the Atlantic, so I get it all. I get
Yeah.
it all.
You're used to this sort of stuff. You probably,
Yeah,
in fact, that's probably a good way to start. How do you feel about kind of these extreme weathers? Are you, I know you're probably seeking a bit of comfort as well, but how do you feel about this? Does it bring back some good memories when there's some dodgy weather?
No, I mean, like, no. I'm a comfort creature like everyone else. You know, I can put up with it. But no. Like, we're definitely in for some sticky stuff coming our way, and I don't think we've seen anything. Yeah, it's like we're going to have some bigger and bigger storms coming.
Yeah, you're not talking today, are you? You're talking.
I'm talking generally.
Few years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's a bit of a downer to start our chat.
I think it resonates with people. What do you want to expand on that a little bit? What's your kind of? Are you more optimistic or pessimistic about the next sort of 50 to 100 years?
I definitely I carry hope. I think that we've got our heads in the sand quite a lot. I think that it's real. You know, the BBC sent me around the Arctic to look at climate change, and I came back absolutely convinced that it's real.
Yeah.
But I came back to a nation that's still in debate. You know, is it man-made? Is it happening? And, you know, we're kind of in a lot of denial over it. And I think a lot of what I see in here, as far as our measures, not only from the institutions, but also from us, it's like a bit of recycling, a bit of plastic bags. It's like, it's just a drop in the ocean. It's like this thing, unless we radically change our lifestyle, this thing's going to hit us big.
Yeah, very soon as well, from what I can understand.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the jury's out on when, in our lifetime, in our kids' lifetime, for sure.
Yeah, and this is the problem, isn't it? Because I think about it's like I'll be listening to a podcast and I'll be taking the dog for a walk, and it can be the most extreme, worry about what's coming. And I'm lucky, I live in the Midlands. I don't live anywhere that's been affected too much right now. I take the headphones out and I'm like, everything's fine around me. And I do think about this a lot. A lot of people are very tired, aren't they? They're busy with the day jobs and the kids and, stressed out. And then they're on the phone or the TV. And so I guess part of what I'm hoping to dig into today with you a little bit is, how do we kind of break some of that apathy? And I know it's like $1 million question, and I feel it as well. I'll be working and I just want to, have a bit of dinner and watch TV. It's like, how do we get that change to happen? Yeah, well, it is the $1 million question. I mean, generally only through things slapping us around the face do we wake up. We're very, we live in a very privileged nation, even though we don't feel it. And of course, I'm not suggesting that people don't have difficult lives. I'm not suggesting that we're not stressed. All of these things are relative, but in real terms, we're a privileged people living on these islands, and part of the a big part of the problem. And so how is that going to change? Well, either through better information, or through political will, which isn't looking very likely because we're not voting in people that are going to make those changes. So we're all complicit. We're all in it. Really, we're just quite scared of change. And also, I think that it's got a lot to do with the type of society that we live in. We're living in this growth economy. We're living in this competitive space whereby we think that the only way that we're going to get our happiness is by having what our neighbor has, and they've got more of this, so I want more of that. So I'm back on the gerbil wheel I get so that I can have this thing. And actually, we're all in that game of trying to collate and chase and grow. And what I've learned from my time with the tribal people is that that's at the heart of the problem. I live with egalitarian tribes, and when everyone's equal, you're not all trying to outdo each other, trying to chase each other to get that thing that your neighbor, because everyone's got the same, everyone is the same. And you can basically relax into enjoying the important things of life, which is family, friends, free time, socializing, hanging out, the things that we actually remember on our deathbed, and not the things that we strive for on our daily activities. And we've got this sort of disconnect going on. And it's I think it's a lot to do with the type of society that we've created. And, and that's quite hard to shift because we've all been born into it. We think it's always been like this, but it hasn't always been like this. It's something we've created, and our leaders aren't interested in changing it because they're doing fine, thank you very much. And the people on the bottom are just like running around trying to make ends meet, and they're fueling the fires, thinking, if only I had what they had. It's like we're all in this madness,
and no one's really happy. We're all separated out, which is why we have all these mental health issues and all these traumas, and all of this stuff is just reflecting on the type of society. We think we've never had it better, but actually, in some ways, we've never had it worse.
Yeah, it is tragic. It's I heard somebody the other day say, we live better. Most people, in the West, I guess, live better than kind of, the Queen did 100 years ago, all the things that we've got. But then on the flip side, we're so alone, we're cut off. I'm in my individual box here. There's somebody in another box at me, a couple of meters over. I remember I lived in a block of flats in Oxford a couple of years ago. I did not know the people that were sharing the roof with me. We were in the same block of flats, and it would be a hello, good morning, and that sort of thing. And actually, you feel a bit, well, I did. You feel a bit weird sometimes. Go, oh, hi, nice to meet you. How are you doing? What's your name? It's just kind of this accepted thing. And we spoke about this before we hit record. But when I was in Spain and I was walking across Spain doing the Camino de Santiago, people would come out of their houses and say "Bon Camino" to you. And people, oh, what are you doing this for? Why are you walking the Camino? And so on an average day, you might speak to 10 or 15 or 20 strangers. And then, I was in London a couple of weeks ago. You don't look at anybody in the subway, and it's really sad. And what happens? I almost made it. I'm sure you've been here. You kind of make a deal with yourself. Right, when I get back to London, Leicester, wherever, I'm going to be more that other person, the open, connective person. But then something kind of happens, kind of a social pressure or something, where you kind of go back into yourself. Maybe it's that weirdness. Have you experienced much of that?
Yeah, I think it's just another symptom of where we're at. I often think of it as like we've just been so successful at creating the society that we want, but only just waking up now to the fact that the society we want might not be very good for us. We're in the sweetie shop. We've done it. We've got all this stuff, but it's like now we're dying of diabetes. It's like, it's not good for us. And like, in some ways we like our freedom. We like our isolation. We like our privacy, but it's not healthy. It means that I don't have to deal with my neighbor if he's giving me a hard time, because I just don't have to deal with him. But in the past, you had to deal, the connections were there, you had to interact with each other. And over time, all of the frictions just got rocks in a sack. All of the rough edges get rubbed off and it smooths over, and we go through our stuff together. But now we don't have to go through our stuff. If I don't have to deal with my shit, basically. Yeah. And so if I don't have to deal with it, I don't deal with it. But it ends up eating you inside, and it ends up bringing all of these mental health issues that we see everywhere, because we're desperately lonely and we're filling all those spaces with our addictive traits, whether it's shopping or being online or whatever it is. We're projecting these crazy images of ourselves out there, which aren't ourselves at all, because we don't want to deal with the real truth. And it's just out of the success of having what we want. We're just too privileged, really. Yeah. And it's a first world problem. You don't have it in other places. And I go to the tribes and I don't see any mental health issues at all in the same way that we have them. And we think, oh, it's a genetic thing. It's always been like this. It's not. It's a societal thing. We've created a really weird society.
Yeah. Let's dig into the mental health. Just before we do, I was in Myanmar a couple of years ago, and we were really not that remote, because they don't really let tourists that remote, to be fair, but we were a bit far out of the city. Everybody had cell phones, and it made me really sad. Everybody had mobile phones, and to be fair, they weren't selfieing themselves as much as we do. I didn't see much of that going on, but I did see a lot of people scrolling and stuff while we're on these like rickety old trains and things. And I thought, oh shit, it's coming this way now as well. It's everywhere, this problem of kind of tech. And like I say, the sweetie shop is a fantastic analogy. I've heard you use that a few times, and it is wonderful. It's like, but if a kid gets into a sweetie shop, how do you convince that kid to say, that's not very good, maybe we need to go next door to the veg shop?
Yeah, I think we've got to figure it out for ourselves. And likewise, with all of the people you saw in Myanmar who are getting these things, it's like, it's patronizing for us to come in and say, you can't do this, you shouldn't do that, because we've got to figure it out for ourselves. And I'm not down on any of it. I think that I'm not a technophobe. I think that it's all okay if we wake up to it. If we don't wake up to it, it's going to be our demise. But if we wake up to it, some of these technologies are going to provide the most extraordinary positive aspects of our future if we choose to create something amazing. The technologies that are there for us all to be so connected and figure out extraordinary ways of living together on this planet. But but we've probably got to go through this transition. We still are hunter-gatherers, really, who are just trying to figure things out. And like we're still sort of designed to be in the plains of Africa, and like we've got all this stuff where we get fat really easily and we go blind because we're staring at screens and all this sort of stuff that we're not kind of designed to do. But I think that the awareness is rising, and it's a privilege very often to get the awareness, to realize that too much money isn't healthy, too much fame isn't healthy, too much stuff isn't healthy. I mean, to get there yourself and realize, oh, that's not the answer, is a privilege. But those people who've had those insights, we need them to stand up and start changing the narrative, because the trouble is that all of our the media and corporations, they're still peddling out the same story. More stuff, more fame, more goods. That's what's going to make you happy. Look at all these famous happy people. They're not famous happy people. They're miserable, half of them, but like we're all on there watching these various shows thinking, oh, if only I had that, I'd be happy. And like it's taking us completely the wrong direction. So we need to change the narratives, and it's up to those who are in the public eye to come out, but also make the changes themselves. It's all very well saying, oh, I'm famous now. You don't want to be famous or rich. It's no good. It's like, mate, you're famous and rich. It's like, fuck off. So we need them to actually start making shifts in their own lives as well. And that's not easy. But it could happen, can happen.
And it is. I'll be so happy if, I'll be so happy when, it's such a dangerous phrase, but I've used it many, many times in my life. And, I still keep thinking, if only I had more followers or a bit more money in the bank, I'd be even, I'd be happy then. And you have to catch yourself. But then I appreciate that I'm in quite a privileged position. There's people that would like to be where I am, absolutely. And I'd like to be where other people are. And so it's easy, people go, it's easy for you to say that. I don't have half of what you have, let's say. And so I do get where people are coming from, where they're trying to strive to build some wealth or just get above the breadline. And there's a great Jim Carrey quote, isn't there, where he says something like, I wish everyone could experience fame and fortune to realize that's not where true happiness and peace lies. And I heard that years ago, but again, didn't sink in, because I was like, well, again, it's easy for you to say that with millions of pounds and fame and stuff. So is that what we need? Then we need those examples of people to come out. I mean, I watch Russell Brand, and I think he's wonderful, and he's really doing a great job with his YouTube channel. But he's got the disadvantage of sitting there with fame and wealth, so it comes through a bit of a filter, I guess. So I'm keen to ask you then, with your mental health and how you deal with things, Bruce, what does that look like for you, and what has that looked like for you in terms of coming out of the military, spending time with these Indigenous people, adjusting back to life in the UK and stuff? What do you do to kind of keep yourself sane?
I don't know that I do.
I was going to ask you if you are sane. I
think I was insane as ever. Well, I've been on a journey with this for some time. And I don't have a dedicated regimen at the moment. I don't have a routine, but I have had in the past, and for various things. And I've definitely gone on lots of healing journeys with different modalities, let's say. For me, I think the biggest things that have changed my life have been the plant medicines, like ayahuasca and iboga and yopo and peyote and all those sorts of things, as well as mushrooms, and then also meditation of different types. Breathwork as well, to a degree. I know you've got a big breathwork following, and you felt the benefits of Vim as well as pranayama. And so a lot of Eastern philosophy, a lot of shamanic philosophy, they've both helped me a great deal. And I try and sort of bring a meditation into my life without it necessarily being sitting on the cushion. I can bring I find foraging an amazing meditation. Okay. It's an extraordinary way of connecting. When you go for a walk, there's such a difference. If you're going for a walk and you're just walking the dog, whistling and looking at the horizon, you can drift off in your mind to another time and place. But if you're looking for plants that are growing wild, you have to be present. what's around you and where they might be growing, and you bring about a very different type of attention. And I find that's a really good form of sort of meditation with a twist.
Yeah.
So I do that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, like, so I don't have a particular practice at present, but I've been through huge changes as a result of those things I just mentioned, from my sort of gross marine previous incarnation of me through to all sorts of different incarnations along the way to where I'm at now, all of which have helped so much.
And have you ever played with cold exposure? Have you ever done ice baths or jumped into the Antarctic?
Yeah, I jumped in. I've got a river right by my house. Literally, I can hear it from the living room, rushing past. And there's a huge waterfall there. I don't go in. I mean, 2 years ago, I went in like once a week throughout the year. This year, I haven't been in as much. But yeah, I can do the cold. I'm not for prolonged periods, but I was doing, when it's snow on the ground, I was getting in for 2 or 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah, so fantastic. Enough to feel it.
Enough, yeah. And how, because that to me is like a level of presence. And I think that Wim talks about that quite a lot around, when you're in the cold water, you're not thinking about your credit card bills, you're in the moment. How does that compare to, say, the foraging? Is it a similar feeling for you, or is it quite different, the foraging kind of mindset?
Yeah, I think that the sort of cold water immersion, I don't do it so much for the presence of mind, because it's so short, but it's quite easy. I mean, you don't actually have much choice. You're in it and you're feeling it, and so it's there. I don't find it same mind training. It's like I do that more for my, what's the word? I've lost the word. When your immune system, I think
like
it's great
the health benefits. Yeah.
For like being present and training the mind to turn off the sort of voice, which is a lot of what meditation is, to be here rather than with the words taking you out of this moment. I think that meditation retreats have been the biggest influence for me in that, because even things like ayahuasca, you become present and you have all of this stuff that comes up, and it's amazing healing. But again, you're not like training your mind, you're just going through a journey that the medicine's taking you on. But to actually train yourself to be present, I found that sitting on the cushion doing like a 10-day retreat, there was nothing that compared to that, because you actually go through the process of learning tools and techniques of how to control that part of your brain that seems to always be this sort of runaway clock that is at the heart of so many negative narratives that we're telling ourselves, so many things that are problematic in the left hemisphere, where the language center is. If you can slow that down or stop that to allow the sense of expansion in the right hemisphere to bring you into the present moment, that to be able to do that through training the mind, especially I think Buddhist meditation's got some extraordinary techniques for training. Then you're like, wow, that's the greatest gift you can give yourself. And I don't necessarily buy into the whole Dharma pill that you're invited to swallow alongside that. That's for another conversation. But the simple act of learning how to control the mind, wow. Thank you very much.
Okay, because I was booked onto a Vipassana retreat in Java, and then through one thing or another, I didn't get the opportunity. It's one of my big regrets of when I went traveling, and so it's been on my kind of list of things that I need to do again. So I'd love to. In your experience, do you think that you should build up to something like that? Because I've got a very busy, frantic mind. I'm constantly on the go. Is it dangerous to jump into a 10-day retreat, do you think?
I think that my natural urge is to say no, it's for everyone, get stuck in. I know that some people have stuff that comes up that needs to be contained and held within a safe setting, and that sometimes those places aren't necessarily capable of holding you in that if really difficult stuff comes up and you need aftercare and a whole I think that's very rare. I think it's very rare that those sorts of centers can't, because the wonderful thing about, let's say, pranayama, which is just a breathwork meditation, is that it doesn't matter what comes up. You're taught equanimity in order to allow the thought to go. As soon as you become aware of the thought, rather than engaging with it in any way, you just come back to the breath. But to do that hour in, hour out for days on end, I remember dabbling with meditation on my journeys and in some of my programs, and thinking, yeah, I get it, but it, it doesn't really work for me. But then doing like a proper retreat, and then 3 days in, suddenly the penny dropping and going, oh my God, I thought I got it, but I had no, this is genuinely amazing and like life-changing. I mean, and I don't use that word very often at all, but I do think that that was a life-changing, it was a life-changing moment for me, realizing, oh my God, I can actually be in control of my mind, and didn't realize how out of control it was. And how much it was running the show in a not really healthy way. And what's so beautiful about doing those types of retreats is because hour after hour, day after day, these sort of layers of the subconscious that are just beneath the surface that you're not aware of suddenly appear, and you find yourself drifting off with it. But because the training is to just come back to the breath without adding any energy, you're like, there's another part of you that's like, oh my God, where the fuck did that thought come from? What was going on there? But you're not allowed to have that thought. You just like come back to the breath. But then later you can reflect on it and go, well, look at all these layers of stuff that was just beneath the surface, that was running the show, that was giving me all these traumas often that rise from you times in your life that you're not even aware that are there, that are allowing you or almost forcing you to have certain types of reaction or defense, that you're just that were there the whole time, but you're just not aware. And that these are the reason why your mind is like spinning out with all this story to try and keep you from going there. And so only when you're truly present and in a space whereby you can allow it to go without it becoming problematic, and then just come back to the breath until the next one appears, and then the next one and the next one. I just remember going, wow, whoever came up with that is a genius. I mean, that stuff's amazing. And so healing,
It makes me very nervous that you can't exercise, you can't bring a pen and pad. Well, this is the one that I understood anyway. You can't be reading. It is just you all day.
I mean, literally, you don't even catch each other's eyes. It's like you walk around, you have your meal and you eat your food, and its etiquette is to not even look at other people, because they're in their process and they want to be in their body and in their energy and in their own feelings. And so you just try as much as possible to keep it all inside, and then stay in this space of just allowing your stuff up, and obviously, like the Marine in me would have said, a bunch of navel gazing, self-indulgent nonsense. And I understand why people say that, because that's what it looks like. Who gets a week to sit on a cushion and just do their own thing? I mean, it is a privilege, but the net result of that, as far as how my relationships changed. I mean, like, I remember the first one I went on, I had this whole trip to Ibiza planned, and I was going to go and do all these, I just canceled everything and just went home and hung out with my mum and dad. It's like, why haven't I done this before? It's like, just the important things surface, and you're like, okay, I know what's important here. And the decisions that you were making and the type of person, all of the real stuff rises up, and you're like, okay, I need to start making some changes in my life, because I see myself differently now, and I get this, and it makes sense. And and I think the wonderful thing about a lot of these healing modalities is that that so much wisdom is within us, and the answers are within us, and they just allow us to unclutter so that we can touch them, and it makes a lot of sense. And my relationships have harmonized so much as a result of all of this. All of this is like allowed me to be in spaces where I'm just not causing that sort of antagonism that used to follow you around. It's like, no, I can be calmer and more loving and more conscientious and compassionate. What a great thing, because I'm not carrying the same trauma. You know, I've just let a lot of it out.
You've processed or dealt with or let go. And you know, coming back to the kind of tech stuff from the start, this is the beauty of it, I guess, is you telling that now, that's going to get to people, and that's probably going to inspire some people to go, oh, I've been thinking about that, or I never even knew about that. And I'll just, because again, I'd kind of put that to one side, and I was like, I need to do that. There's two things that I've been running away from. One is the meditation retreat, and the other one, I don't know if you've ever done this, it's a dark retreat where you spend a few days. Have you ever done that? What was that like?
Amazing. I did one. I did like a self one when I used to live on the island of Ibiza, and as I left, I wanted to sort of say goodbye to the land, and so I basically found a cave and I just went in, and I was in there for about 5 days, I think, and in complete darkness. Yeah, amazing. And I had little bits of food and water. I mean, no, it wasn't food. I had like juices and stuff, you know, but which sort of like are dotted around me where I could find them, you know, because it's complete darkness. And after about 3 days, I started seeing things, you know, like I mean, people talk about pineal glands and dimethyltryptamine and various things, but I don't know what it is exactly. But you definitely start getting visions. It's quite weird.
Yeah,
I would like to do a longer one. Yeah, I'd be up for that.
Yeah, there was a chap I interviewed down in Plymouth Way, I think, and he does them, but he combines it with rebirth in breathwork. So you're huffing and puffing, you know, during those days. And he also does something with a snorkel. And you then on the last day you're in water, and it's like a rebirthing process, and he's with you, and I think he can see but you can't, and the whole thing just scared the bejesus out of me, but in a way that makes me feel like I need, you know something's pulling you think I need to have a crack at that. There's something in there making me go there.
I went back into the womb. I was reborn on an ayahuasca ceremony once, which was quite an experience. It's a very different type of healing, ayahuasca, but I mean, I've done it many, many times before this, but this particular one, I went back into the womb and I was reborn, and I mean, it's a quite a big story, and there was a few things that were happening to me because I was in a deep process before going into the ceremony, and I had been doing lots of meditating, and I was experiencing things that I remembered I hadn't had these experiences since I was a small kid, and I was like having these like nightmares in the days before the ceremony that were very similar to like when I was a kid. And it was like, it felt like I was like regurgitating eggs, like sort of like this weird feeling around my throat where I was just trying to bring up. So it was very, very weird feeling, but I was like, fuck, I haven't had this since I was like 3 or 4 or 5, like literally hadn't even thought about it, totally forgotten, and then revisiting these memories. And then also this like ball of energy, that electricity that felt like it was behind my belly button, and I was like doing this deep meditation into that space, trying to chase it like a dragon around my tummy, and like trying to be with it and hold it. And so all of this was going on in my, and I was like, this is really strange, something's happening here. Then I did the meditation, then I did the ayahuasca ceremony, and then during the ceremony I basically went back into the birth canal, very odd. And I don't know how I knew it was that, but I remember kind of coming out and then having this constriction around my neck, and then kind of figuring out what it must have been. And I remember speaking to my mum later, and saying, well, it's so weird. I had the ceremony, and I imagined that I was being reborn. That sounds so weird to tell you now. And I had this thing here, and she's like, oh, that's so weird, because and I really don't think she had told me before. But she was like, yeah, when you came out, the umbilicus was wrapped around your neck. We had to stop the contractions and cut it off. So the whole belly button and this was all wrapped up in that. And the experience of vomiting from that moment, whatever it was this stuck trauma, it felt like there was some deep adrenaline rush that had just got stuck in my gut, and it felt like, and I sort of released that, and then I had a huge shift in my personality as a result. It's quite weird.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like there was certain traits and aspects to myself that I that I always used to have. And from that moment, they just disappeared. And I'm like, wow, that's just absolutely released some part of me that was acting from a deep, deep place of fear, which must have come about from that moment. Now, how much of that is all made up in my head versus how much of that may actually be the true reality of me storing a memory from that deep precognitive space. You know, this is before the language centers have even formed in the brain, you know. I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you, I can promise you that I went through a shift in my character in a positive way as a result of that. And if it's just a story that goes alongside it, I don't care. The truth is, it was a true healing for me.
Yeah, it had a positive result. You remind me of a story from somebody that was in America who owns a float lab company.
Okay.
And he would do these big, long floats. And sometimes it would be an overnight float.
With dolphins.
Oh no, not that chap. No, this
Lily,
is years later. But
Lily.
yeah. That's a different story. A bit of a sexual twist, isn't it?
Ketamine and dolphins.
Yeah.
The flotation tank. He invented the flotation tank, didn't he?
What was his name?
Lily. Not Pete,
okay. Yeah.
Dennis, no, I can't remember.
Oh,
anyway,
they were getting a bit friendly, weren't they, with the dolphins?
And he used to do like intravenous ketamine in a flotation tank, which he invented, and dolphins. I'm like, oh my!
He's having a good time.
That's next level weird.
So this chap, what he was saying was, it was like unpack or defragging the hard drive, which is a bit an old term now. Most people don't get that, but he was saying he was able to go further and further back, not to the point of the womb, but he rang his mum up and said, I've got this memory, you had this blue dress with checkers on and I'm lying on you and your belly's moving up and down, I'm cuddling you. And she's like, how the hell do you remember that? You were like, whatever, 1 year old or something. And he was basically saying, cutting out all this external stimulus and focusing and unpacking, he was able to go right back. So it makes sense what you're saying, maybe even from that point of view, that it's all in us somewhere and it just gets lost or forgotten.
I think it makes a lot of sense, you know. It's like, there's other cultures, this is a no-brainer. It's like for so many other places, you know, the brain and the heart and the stomach are all very connected neural pathways. I mean, obviously the neurons go throughout our body, but like there's dense centers of neuro activity in those areas. I mean, there's more neurons in our stomach than in a dog's brain, you know. It's like it's full of them. And like and you know, the Greeks had words for the different types of wisdom that came from the heart, the different type of wisdom that came from the head, you know, and the fact that a lot of emotion and emotional memory is stored in the stomach. I mean, other cultures are aware of this, but as we've got so more and more caught up in the left hemisphere of the brain, we're just so, I think, I mean, like, I know the hemispheres is a bit of a weird one because not everyone follows that, but I'm a big follower of the work of Ian McGilchrist, who you saw was in my film. But like let's just forget the hemispheres, but just say we're stuck in the head. And so we're disembodied. We're not really in our bodies very much. We're not really connecting to these areas. And we also don't have healing practices, you know, like not most, but many indigenous cultures that I visited have healing practices. They know how to release this stuff. For them, it's de rigueur. You've got to get it out. But for us, we kind of get stuck, and it affects our behavior in all sorts of ways. And it's a no-brainer once you started the journey of unpacking, because you're like, it feels real. It's like, yeah, I had a healing. That really made sense. Yeah. You know. And so I'm all about it. It makes a lot of sense to me.
It's I've had some problems with my back recently, and you know, the doctors, it almost always, it's not the doctor's fault, but it almost always comes down to, do you want some painkillers? You know, as opposed to what could be causing it. Is it psychological? Is it emotional? So yeah, it's no, and that again, another wonder, I guess, of the internet's been able to hear stories and research and find all these people in different areas that I've got, you know, ways. Breathwork's been a wonderful healing modality for me, because I don't know if you ever heard the term gut sucking. A lot of people do it where they suck their stomach in because they don't want to show their belly, but it's terrible for your diaphragm. And when your diaphragm's not moving, your heart's not getting pumped properly and your organs aren't getting moved around. And so there's all these consequences just to holding your stomach in to look a little bit slimmer. So it's just little things like that, silly things. But, you know, the Barbie doll's got a lot to answer for, you know, in society. you told a story on another podcast about sound healing. Do you remember that story?
Yeah.
Would you tell that to us, please?
Yeah. I was doing a clown course actually. There was a clown school near my house in Ibiza, and it was. I did that also as another healing modality. I was doing everything I could possibly get my hands on back then. I had the money, I could afford all the different treatments. So part of the clown school, every morning we did different types of what they would call it energy work. I know that's a bit of a triggery phrase for some people, but like some type of presence making therapeutic work. And for 2 weeks we had the sound therapist, and he just did a whole bunch of different stuff with us. But there was one occasion where, in every half hour we would do a different exercise, but this one exercise in particular, we were just all invited to be in a circle, and then anyone could jump into the middle and make whatever sound they wanted, and we all clapped and danced and stomped along to it. And so, every now and then you're like, okay, you pull up the guts to be that person. So you jump in and make whatever sound comes out. And at the end of the exercise, he was like, Bruce, back then when you got in the circle, you were doing this singing. I noticed something in you. Do you mind if we do it again? And I'm like, yeah, sure, man. What? I mean, I had no idea what he was talking about. He saw something no one else did. And so he got by the piano and everyone was sat down, and he's like, hey, just make those sounds again that you were making. And so I'm like, okay, sure, man. Like, whatever it was that I was doing, I don't remember. But basically, I think it wasn't words. I was just singing notes. And then I got to a note, and it was like, and I've got a bit of a sore throat at the moment, so it's not going to give it full justice. But he said, like, can you hold that? I'm like, sure. It was like, and then it's like, can you push it a bit more? Like, and then no, more. And then it's like, and as I pushed out of nowhere, and I genuinely, it shocked me. I was so surprised. I suddenly started bawling my eyes out, like floods of tears, just like, what the fuck? And like, just literally something happened inside of me where this, just pushing this note brought this extraordinary release of something. And the sort of what came along with that, he said, like, close your eyes and describe or sing or put words to the experience if you can. And all I remember seeing was like the tar sands in Canada and some of the Amazon forest destruction, and basically Mother Nature being torn apart. And that was somehow the image, and maybe that represented that pain that I was carrying inside my body, that I was releasing in that moment. It's like the pain of first-hand experience of our destruction of this planet. And it was super, super powerful for me. And I think it makes sense, when, without wanting to sound too hippie, it's like, everything is a resonance of sorts. It's like, we know from quantum field theory that the wave particle duality, that there is a resonation to a vibration to all things, and that we're interacting with that, with the double splits experiment. We saw how just by maybe even looking at something, you're interfering and having an influence somehow in how things appear and behave. And so we know that at the very, very quantum level of life, there is a waveform. And is it any surprise that we as entities with these cavities inside us that have different sizes, where different waves will resonate and therefore bring about unlocking of things? I mean, like, I don't know exactly what I'm talking about, but it doesn't surprise me that sound and the cavities inside us, and the fact that we are just resonant beings anyway, and the fact that I believe that we're somatically carrying different sort of stuck energies within us, that these types of healings can release stuff, you know, and like that's certainly how it felt to me. I mean, I genuinely had no idea that I was about to burst into tears. And then you go to, you know, I've been with tribes where they will try, they will, you know, I've seen people kids very ill in a hammock in a Moloko in the Amazon, and then 6 people, 3 either side, literally singing at them all night long. And I remember just thinking to myself at the time, oh, God, poor them, if only they knew about Western medicine and they could give them this and give them that. And no doubt Western medicine has done many, many wonderful things. But I was so dismissive of sound as a form of healing. And you know, I think that it's quite possible that there's something that they know that we don't, you know. Why not? How dare we be so arrogant?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's something that you would dismiss quite easily. And I remember there was a study once, I can't remember the exact study, but it was something around hospital beds where you could see greenery through the windows. And there's like a higher rate of recovery with the people that could see nature through the window versus those that had like a concrete view. And it's just this, again, like we're shutting out the natural world and we wonder why we're getting sick. But when I heard your story about the sound thing, I was like, oh shit, that's a really powerful form of breath work that I've not really thought about too much. Just this like making this noise, because I'm sure we've all done it. You know, you scream into a pillow can be very, very releasing and makes you feel a lot better. Cathartic. Really, really, really relaxing. So no, that just really piqued my interest there. So it's something I'm going to look into more. Yeah, especially. And was this person dressed as a clown out of interest or not when they did it?
No.
Okay, I'll take that image out of my head then. You're just 2 clowns like screaming at each other and crying. Okay.
No, thank God. No, that would be weird. Like big long shoes and a red nose. No.
Okay. Oh, that's a shame. At this point in your life now, when do you feel most nourished?
In nature, definitely. I feel nourished with dear friends in nature, with time, like not rushing, with time to relax. I feel nourished in the sun. Well, I guess I say that because I live in Wales. It's in short supply around here, so I feel very nourished when I get it. Simple things. I feel nourished. Friends and family, nature, and I also quite like. I get a certain buzz out of things like collecting things from the local area, like, you know, like growing food or foraging, and then either not so much cooking. I get quite excited when I store and ferment or pickle or jar stuff. I don't know. Maybe it's the prepper in me that gets like, maybe I'll be able to survive from the land here. It kind of does something to me. It's like, oh, cool. That I get a little sense that I'm more connected to place when I'm able to think, oh, maybe I'll get through the winter with these food substances. Maybe I understand a little bit more about how to look after myself. You know, I mean, I don't know if nourished is the right word, but it does something to me. I could definitely feel more connected, more at home, more. I think nourished, actually. I do. I feel nourished by that. Those simple things. My girlfriend's family's from Poland, and so we go over most Christmases. And a couple of years ago, they were pickling pickles, you know, mini baby gherkins. And so I'm helping. I'm having a good time. It's a family thing. We're all in the kitchen doing it. The water's being boiled and salted, and you know, cleaning the jars out. And I was like, okay, so how much money are you saving doing this? And she's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, so we're doing this now. So what does it normally cost? And how much are we saving making each one of these pots? And she's like, no, it's more expensive this way. I was like, why are you doing it then? It's like, it's just something we're doing. They've grown their own cucumbers and they pickled them. And I couldn't get my head around it for ages. And it was just like the actual joy. And I've got those memories now. And it's the same at Christmas. They make pierogi or dumplings at Christmas. We made hundreds of them, Bruce, a couple of years ago. And
And now I get it. That Christmas day, we were all in the kitchen laughing and joking as, oh, here comes the Englishman that doesn't know how to cook. We'll trust him with a couple of dumplings, but we're not going to make him many. And I was okay. I worked in kitchens, but a lovely experience, like the 6 of us in the kitchen and all the pots are boiling. And so, I kind of get that now, but I wouldn't have got that before, because it's like, well, why would you do that? That's a waste of time. I could use that time.
So weird, isn't it? You know, and like we do, you know, productivity is a curse in our society. It's like, you know, the idea of sitting around and just enjoying ourselves and not being productive is like, it's almost like, well, who does that? You know, you've got to be productive. And if something, especially with like foods and things, it's like, you know, and I'm the same. It's like, you know, the amount of effort it takes to grow tomatoes and time, and I definitely spend more money on, you know, on my polytunnel, getting I mean, if I worked out the human resources hours, and then all the compost, and then all the bits and bobs with the tools and all the rest of it, it's like, it's ridiculous how much each potato and tomato and runner bean costs. I mean, it's like unbelievable how much. I mean, the cost will come down in time because you know, the outlay of the various bits and tools and machinery. But no, for me, it's like knowing that I'm not impacting the world as much, knowing that there's a sense of resilience, that I have, that I have the capability of looking after myself, and then also just knowing that it's really organic and it hasn't had loads of food miles and it tastes great, you know. And there is something extra special about eating food that you've grown yourself, and it's also like humbling when you realize just how much space it would take to grow all the food you need for yourself, you know. And so it's I get a little buzz out of that, and also it sort of ties you to the land a bit as well. It's like, you know, when I you know, normally when people go away, it's like, well, you need someone you can close the house, but maybe you need someone to look after the pets. When I go away, it's like, you got to have someone to look after the pets, the ducks, and the garden, you know. It's like that's not an easy thing to ask someone to come and do. Therefore, it means you're here more, which of course it also used to be like my life was always traveling, and then to slow down and be in one place is another really difficult journey. And for a lot of people, they wouldn't want to do that, but I guess that's another part of the journey that I've been on. It's like trying to figure out why it is that I think that some of these tribal communities that I visited seem so content, and yet I'm so in need of all this stimulation. You know, why do I need to constantly be traveling, constantly be having this like huge influx of big stimulation in order to be happy? And that's an ongoing journey for me, and I'm definitely not there yet. But I think that connecting to a place, connecting to a landscape, connecting to a people, belonging somewhere does something to you that we just kind of forgotten all about a lot in our society. And I think that trying to re-establish that, even though it seems like a massive sacrifice at first, I have a belief that the blessings on the other side of that journey are going to be really worthwhile, you know. But it's hard because, you know, we've got FOMO. It's like all your friends are showing their Instagram pictures of them off skiing and them off doing the thing, and you're like, oh God, you know, I used to do that used to be great fun, and here I am just plodding out the same sort of a day. And God, I'm making it sound turgid just even talking about it. But I think there's something in it, and I think that and it's not just about being resilient. I think that there's watching the seasons unfold, seeing things like finding all of that excitement in the minutiae rather than the big stuff is I think is, you know, can be really beautiful journey to go on, and certainly it would be better for the planet.
It's digital detox comes to mind. I've seen a few retreats where they're doing that, where you kind of take away all the stimulating foods and you know, you put all your devices away and you just read books. And not quite the 10-day meditation, but you know, let's turn the volume down on the stimulation for a few days. And people seem, from what I've seen, people seem to come out of that a little bit more relaxed and appreciative.
Yeah, I don't have a phone signal in about, I have to cycle 10 minutes or drive 5 minutes to get a phone signal in.
Which to most people sounds horrific, but actually it's probably a bit of a blessing.
It's a dream. I mean, we're like, they were going to put in a mast and we were all up in arms.
Yeah. But I find that for me, it's the pendulum swings. Like when we sold the bed and everything, the car a couple of years ago, and bought that one-way ticket out, and it was, you know, it was amazing and scary. And, you know, you're doing that at sort of late 30s and everyone's saying you're mental, you know, you're giving your job up and stuff. But the scenes we left, everybody, it just looked like everybody was getting a house that I knew. And I was like, oh, I wish I had a house. And then we've come back and we've got a house now. I was like, oh, I wish I could go traveling, but I can't because I've got to pay for the house now. So it kind of goes like that, doesn't it? And it's how do you find that little bit of balance? And you're right, the FOMO can be quite toxic if you're not careful. I'm conscious of time, so I've got a couple of last things I wanted just to ask you about. When it comes to your time with spending time with all these wonderful Indigenous people, you speak, and I've listened to, you know, a few of your conversations and watched a lot of your shows, and there are some obvious things that come out around community and being equal and sharing and I guess struggling maybe, and openness. What I'm interested is, are there some more subtle things that you don't often talk about that you might have seen with those tribes? I'd love to get your thoughts. There's like maybe a top 5 that we kind of know about. Are there some lesser known things, benefits of the kind of the people you've spent time with?
Yeah, I think that child rearing is the big one. I mean, I don't quite know what you've heard, and I don't know what necessarily I've said elsewhere. So maybe I'll just give you the ones that resonate with me most. It's like, because I talk about different ones at different times. But I think child rearing, I think that, you know, the idea that it takes a community to raise a child it makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. I think that when it's just, you know, kids are sponges. It doesn't matter if you try and hide your feelings or emotions from them. They know what's going on, and they're going to absorb it all. And if there's just like 2 parents and a number of kids in one house, they're going to absorb whatever's going on. Yeah. But when you've got less like walls and constrictions, and there's family members and other families around, and the kids can just literally dart between one or the other, then because that's allowed, but not allowed, but that's just normal because everyone has the same value system, everyone's like basically in the same group. And so the kids, half the time, you know, you might not see your kids for days, you know, and kids can literally go and be adopted by the next door family. And so the kids basically find where it is that they want to grow up within that space. And so if the parents are having a stressful time, rather than them not receiving the love and attention that they need, or whatever it is that's required, or maybe them getting things they shouldn't have, like, you know, like traumas from agitated parents or whatever, they don't need to, because they just go next door. They can just all as a group just hang out with each other. Kids don't want to hang out with parents. Kids want to hang out with each other. Yeah. And so they just have this time. And I think that there's a lot of what we've been talking about in the last hour has been us dealing with our traumas. Yeah. And I think that so many of our problems wouldn't be the same if we didn't have those traumas. And I think that the type of upbringing we have is where the traumas are coming from. And in those communities, I think that it's diffused out. And I think the kids aren't receiving the same level of problem. You know, I can't remember which psychologist it was who said, like, there's some things that should happen and some things that shouldn't happen during upbringing. It's a very small, you know, tight balance, and you know, and we get a lot of things not happening that should and happening that shouldn't, and I think that in a community setting, there's much more chance of that working out. So I think that's, for me, one of the biggest ones. Yeah, is community, and then I think the healing modalities and them being like knowing that there's healing and having all of these practices that a lot of tribes have is really big one. I think that being really connected to your resources and knowing your impact on the environment, so that you know what not to be too excessive. I think that's a really big one. I think having a spiritual practice that's shared within the group, that's also related to nature and not humans, you know, and seeing yourself as part of the wider environment, not above it, is a really big one for our egos. And I think, as we mentioned earlier, I think that hunting and gathering in particular is a type of meditation. So you're on a daily basis, you've got a practice that makes you present.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as we got into farming, you didn't have to be present anymore. You know, you can be, but you don't have to be. And so, you know, so it's quite possible that we've just gone off on this tangent away from the here and now into these other times and places. And, you know, we've created amazing things as a result, but we've also caused all these problems as well.
Yeah.
I think that the importance of women in society, especially in egalitarian societies, one of the biggest insights that I realized when I went to meet the Benjeli people in Africa and also the Panan who were in the film, is how powerful women are when they're in a truly equal society, and that when they're in a truly equal society, they don't need to try and behave like the guys in order to get power.
Right.
They've actually got their own quality of power that they can operate from without having to try and occupy our space. And so you have these two very different qualities of power from the men and the women, whereby they understand in those types of societies that equality isn't sameness. We think in our society, because we've been in a patriarchy for so long, that in order to be powerful, you have to be acting in this male space, and that we all want to be the same. And they're like, no, that's ridiculous. No, we are different. We, you know, individuals are different, and men and women are different, and they have their different qualities. That's a really complex one for today, because we have very different understanding of sex and gender, and we don't really like this binary understanding. But like, to live in a society whereby the women are super powerful, actually probably the most powerful in the society, more powerful than the men, and that they have their own quality, and of exercising that power, which is totally different to the male quality of exercising that power, their power. And so just being in that space was like so unbelievable for me to experience that. It's like, well, that's how it could be. And another thing that's really interesting is like this idea of no coercion. So the kids aren't told. No one's told. No one tells anyone what to do. You know, and no one tells anyone else what to do as an adult. But also, as soon as a kid is walking, they're an adult, and so they're not told what to do either. I mean, they're encouraged and they're advised and they're held and loved, but they're not. No one's telling anyone what to do. So there's 1,000 different things that you're like, wow, this is how a society can be, whereby everyone is fully individual. No one's telling anyone what to do, and they can be whoever they want. But so they're actually more individual in a funny sort of way than we are. But what they all love so much is the collective. So even though they're individualized, their sort of priority is to keep the thing going, and so they prioritize the group over themselves. And we've got it completely the other way around, and we like prioritize ourselves over the group, and yet we're actually more constrained than we have, more laws and rules and regulations than imaginable, and they have none, and yet they're like so tight because they prioritize the group. It's quite hard to get your head around that one, but yeah, I don't know if that in any way answers it. I mean, I could keep going. Oh, I've lost your audio, Parr. No. What that is? You can hear me though, yeah? Have we been over the hour? Oh, there you go.
Oh, so sorry about that. I could hear you the whole time, so that's good.
Great.
I can cut that bit out. Just one last follow-up question on that, Bruce. Did you learn anything about people's attitude towards death from any of these different people you spent time with?
Yeah, definitely.
Any kind of key insights you can share on that? Because I feel like we're very individualistic here as well, aren't we? That's the problem. You know, you don't really see the funeral. It's normally during the working day, and often I hear the term "let's be strong for that person while they're dying," which to me, I hate that term because it means don't show your emotions, and I feel like we're doing ourselves a massive disservice when it comes to kind of the way that we handle people dying, or at least in my experience, anyway.
I totally hear you. 1 second, man.
Sure.
There's a really interesting guy that I follow called Stephen Jenkinson, who some call him the death doula, or the he has a different terms. Anyway, he's got a couple of funny sort of titles that people know him by. But so this guy, he was like head of the largest home-based palliative care organization in Canada for like 20-30 years. So he's been at like 1,000 deathbeds, and there's been a film about him, and then he also has these schools, of which I attend actually one or twice, because I like a lot of what he has to say. But he tells this story, and it resonates with some of my own experiences as well, of living with Indigenous peoples. And he says that when he's been, well, he would never say this because he's a masterful storyteller, so he wouldn't ever be so explicit. He's more of a poetic painter of a picture rather than the explicit that I'm about to deliver. But for the benefit of time, I would hazard that perhaps he would suggest that maybe at the last moment that he's experienced of people passing in our society, some do it very well, but many don't. Right. And it doesn't matter which tradition or religion you follow. Some people really struggle in that moment. And what he might suggest is that, you know, it doesn't matter who your loved ones are that say, I'm with you till the end. There gets to a moment when you actually have to go alone to this last phase. Yeah. And then when you're going alone, you're looking into where it is you're going. And what you're looking at in some ways is like looking into the past. So you're looking forwards, but you're looking into the past because what you're looking towards is who's already gone before, who might you meet? And what you realize is you're actually looking into the abyss because all of those people who've gone before have completely forgotten. And maybe at some level beneath the surface in all of us is this sort of panic that we know that we're that there's this oblivion at the end, because in our society we're not paying attention to that space. And maybe that somehow drives this need for fame, this need for building skyscrapers or whatever it is. It's like we sort of like desire to be remembered. And then if you compare that to a tribe, and this is what resonates with me, is imagine that every time we have a ceremony, every time we have a birth or a death or anything, it's like, you know, we talk it, not any birth, every time we have let's say a wedding, like that the ancestors are celebrated alongside us. The ancestors are there with us. Yes. And that when I die, I know I'm going to become one of the ancestors that's going to go into the ground, that's going to feed that tree, that's going to feed that fruit, that is going to feed the next generation, and that this cycle of life and death is all around us, and the ancestors are literally living here with us, and that maybe even we are their dreams. We are the ancestors dreaming from that space, and this is the lives that we are enacting their dreams. And so when he paints a picture like that, I think I can understand how some cultures wouldn't have fear of passing if they know that they're going to a place where everybody else is, and that it's a celebrated place, and it's a place that's still alive. We talk to the ancestors as if they're still here, and we know that they are because they're in the ground around us. And I think that that's a very different way of dealing with death to the way that we have this panic, and we have this sort of phobia and this denial, and I think that Stephen might be right in that it underlies and underpins a great deal of our attitudes and ways that we are living our lives today in a not very healthy way.
Yeah.
So I don't know that, I don't know if that answers you.
It does. It's frequent on my mind, the passing of time. I don't know if it's just because I'm having that midlife crisis. You know, you get to 40 and you start thinking about everything and where you've come from and where you're going. Can I ask you one last question, Bruce?
Yeah.
Because I know we've kind of run out of time, but so my best friend Les, who turned me on to you, I rang him up quickly before this. I said, right, I've been prepping for Bruce, got my questions ready. I've been watching all this stuff again. Have you got something for him? And he had a question straight away, which was in Kauai, when you lost yourself in the Ganges, I'm trying to find if I wrote the quote down. The person next to me was me. This is you saying it. And we were, and I was you and you were me. Everything finally made sense, calm, loving, immense empathy, the river, the clouds. Have you been able to replicate that feeling anywhere else other than being with the largest group of human beings in the world?
Yeah, I have, but normally only through some kind of medicine or practice, breathwork, or in deep meditation, or some plant medicine. So yeah, I have. I mean, like things like I've had many an experience similar to that in ceremonies with things like ayahuasca and iboga, and you know they're different, but they have a similar quality in that there's a loss of the identity with self and a coming into being with all that is around you. I've definitely had that on a few occasions, and you know, and sometimes there's extraordinary visuals that go with it. I remember one time being a ceremony in Ibiza, ayahuasca ceremony, and then coming out, I couldn't quite vibe with what was going on, and then sometimes like I get these urges to do things, and I don't know where the urge is coming from. It's like I'm like watching myself going, this is really odd. I don't know why this is happening, but I just really feel I need to go and do this now. And so I remember one time, and there's a few that have happened like this, but here's one to end with that make you smile. So going out onto this grassy verge, it was a beautiful starry night, and like lying down, and then kind of I just wanted to curl up, but then there's this part of me that's like forcing me to like spread open my legs and spread open my arms like a starfish. And I'm like, this is really weird. If someone walks past now, I'm going to look really odd. So I'm going to curl up again. And it's like, no, you've got to do this thing. So you're like, I'm like, okay, this is weird. And then my head like facing up. So I'm like looking up at the sky. And then my mouth opening like really wide. And like, this is odd. And then like trying to curl up again. It's like, no, I've got to do this thing. Well, I don't know what's this about. So like literally like starfish out. And then my mouth like really open, like stretched open, and I'm like literally thinking to myself, I don't actually know what's going on. This is really odd. I don't know why I don't know why I'm like feeling this strong impulse to do this, and then watching the stars suddenly start moving like in a circle. And I was like, okay, this is weird. This is really weird. And then like literally starting to spiral around. And then they're literally spinning, and then them coming like a tornado. So like the whole of the firmament, like the universe essentially, basically spinning, and then like coming like a tornado, then down to me, and then me with my mouth open, and the whole thing just going, and then basically into my mouth, and then basically going through me. Yeah. And then me exploding into a billion pieces, and then I am the universe. And it's like, okay, that's kind of cool.
Wow.
Where did that come from? Tell your friend, yes, it's happening.
Okay, he'll be watching this for sure. Thank you. Thank you, so Bruce. It's been a pleasure. I feel so blessed to have been able to have some time with you. So thank you, mate, for doing that. I'll put your website and your Instagram. Is there any, and your Twai link? Is there anywhere else want to direct people to for you?
No, my friend. No. Well, yeah, that would be great. Please put the Twai link. If anyone's interested in what I was talking about, there's actually a really nice ayahuasca sequence and a sequence when I went to Africa to be with the Benjeli on the Twai website, and I'll send you the link. It's basically on the Twai website. It's under the heading next, and then you've got next, and it's like ayahuasca, and then Benjeli, and then those are free clips that people can watch, and they kind of give a little bit more about some of the stuff we've been talking about just now.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Bruce. And until next time, take care. And I hope the weather's not too bad where you are. All right. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Cheers. Congratulations for sticking around to the end of the Breathcast. Just wanted to remind you again about this. The link is below. Vagal toning through vibrations and really cool, relaxing music. Particularly good for those people that struggle with meditation. This is something that gets you into the zone really, really quickly. And I really love it. I really love it. I'm so happy I've got this now. And I look forward to sharing that other podcast with you soon where I first experienced it without even knowing what it was. Sensei, link is below. A couple of last messages. If you can, follow us on Instagram, takeadeepbreath.co.uk is the handle there. Almost at 2,000 followers, which is so cool. Got my other channel, Mike Maher. Link again is below. So this channel is evolving, and eventually we're going to move the long form content off. And we're going to have its own separate Breathcast channel where the long form will be there. This channel is going to be predominantly breathing exercises with some probably clips of some cool stuff around breathing. And then there'll be me talking on my channel. It all sounds very convoluted, but it should be easy by the time it's done. And there'll be me just talking about all things breathing, how do pulse oximeters work? What's the biology of science? What's hemoglobin and why is it important? How do we make sure that our hemoglobin and our red blood cells are able to release oxygen in the right way? So what I'm really excited about doing is just doing more of this, talking to the camera with you and sharing bite-sized educational content about the wonderful world of breathing and what I've learned over the last 5 years when it comes to wellness and breathing and all that good stuff. So I'm really excited to kind of ramp that channel up next year. You can join us. I think there's 97 people that have subscribed, including my mum on there and my girlfriend. So if you want to be one of the first 100, then click on that subscribe button. Let's hope that grows a little bit. But that's an exciting place where we can share a lot more stuff. So if you've got ideas around what you'd like me to talk about, mouth versus nose, how do you run when you're breathing? How do you breathe when you're running? What's the benefits of humming, and 1,000 other breath related questions. That's all coming on there. So anyway, enough yabbering from me. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for watching right the way through to the end. You're one of the special few that made it all the way through. So I really appreciate you. And we'll see you on the next Breathcast. And if you like this, check out this relaxing breathing exercise here. This is what you should spend the next few minutes doing. Cheers. See you later.